Four guys left. Let's get to Amari Cooper, who is currently wide receiver 27 on the year, averaging 13 points per game. He's got a rib injury, been pretty inconsistent. What's the deal with him? And then, Tom, maybe you could also talk about the quarterback there, too, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR. I think he went down as well. But what do you got on these Browns players?
So, Cooper, this is actually a nice plug for our Instagram page. I put out an awesome video on him the other day and his injury. So we can see, looking at the play, he takes a shot right to the side of the ribs by the defender's helmet. That's a really good way to injure the ribs. Now, fortunately, x-rays were negative, so he doesn't have a fracture, but he's dealing with some bruising. I even heard Schefter report an oblique injury, thinking anatomically the obliques attach right onto the ribs, so they're very commonly injured together. Now, these are a factor because whenever we twist our body, like receivers are constantly doing to change directions and to twist to catch a ball, if the ribs are injured, then the muscles in there are going to be guarding a little bit, making it a little bit harder to rotate. And then also the lat muscle, which is a huge muscle, attaches onto the ribs, and that gets stretched when we raise our arms above head, like going up to catch a ball. So if there's an injury there, that could be limited as well. But usually these guys won't return to play until all that motion has been normalized. And it comes down to a pain tolerance thing from that. So we'll just have to look out to see if Cooper's going to play this week. They haven't given us much indication on if he'll go this week or if he'll sit this week. I wouldn't be surprised if he sits, but sometimes these guys just tough it out and play, and we don't really see that much of a drop-off in their fantasy production. So whenever he does step back on the field, I know that you were saying he hasn't been great this year, but if he's a guy that was regularly in your starting lineup, I don't think that needs to change whenever he does play again.
Okay. What about your level of concern if it's P.J. Walker at the quarterback spot for this week? I mean, that concerns me a little bit. He's not the worst backup in football, but I think that would discount Cooper's production at least a little bit, I would say, right?
If compared to Watson, yes, but I don't know that PJ Walker is that much different than DTR. DTR is dealing with a concussion, so again, he'll have to get through the protocol in order to play. I don't see a whole lot of difference between those two. Yeah. And honestly, this is going to sound insane. I think Joe Flacco gives these receivers the best upside.
Wait, they have Flacco? Am I dumb? They have Flacco.
They signed Flacco.
Oh, yeah. Just let Flacco get in there and air it out. That guy has a cannon. I'm sure he still does. That'd be interesting to see. I mean, listen, that's not a bad pickup with the Browns being 7-4. They are, I mean, as it stands now, they might be the worst 7-4 team maybe of all time. I mean, their defense keeps them in games, and no Nick Chubb, it's the weirdest situation ever. I mean, they play the Rams this week. They might lose to them, and they just got hammered last week by the surging Broncos, 29-12. How about those Broncos, man? Unbelievable how bad they were to start. I think they're 5-6 now, or 6-5.
Yeah.
What the hell happened? Good to see, though. But just another, fantasy implication here. I do like Njoku just a little bit more now, especially with backup quarterbacks coming in. We don't know who's going to be running that offense and behind center. So Njoku I do like. And again, Tom said, I do agree with this. If Cooper plays and he was a guy, like how you said that, Tom, if he was a guy that was consistently in your lineup, I think you play him. I mean, the upside is not tremendous, but he's okay, and he will get you some points. Last two guys. This is a guy with some upside, a guy that Tank Dell I'm about to talk about here, and we're going to discuss. He is now wide receiver 11, 14.2 points per game. What a phenomenal talent. He's got a great rapport with Stroud. I don't know if I'm exaggerating, Tom. I think he's become a proven wide receiver one for fantasy. Maybe I'm being a little bit crazy and recency bias is getting to me, but please tell me that Tank Dell is going to play this week.
Well, first off, I agree with everything you just said. This guy is incredible. Like, he's always open, crisp route runner, hands catcher, the whole deal. Unfortunately, I don't like his injury. He's dealing with a calf injury. And remember, we talked about this last week with his teammate Nico Collins. The calf is critical for wide receivers, for their ability to get off the line, to accelerate, top-end speed, jumping, everything. And we see a massive dip of 44% fantasy production when wide receivers return from this injury. Only 1 out of 18 receivers in our sample size going back to 2017 has met or exceeded their pre-injury production. And as you correctly guessed last week, that was Antonio Brown from 2017. So with Dell, who's averaging 14.2 points a game. A 44% dip would be 8 fantasy points. So perhaps not enough to kill you, but not what we're used to from him. So
Wow.
this is crazy, but I'm actually considering benching him this week if he plays. Of course, you got to look at your roster, see who else you have, but this is an injury that kills receivers in their first game back from it. After they get past that first game, it gets better. So for the fantasy playoffs, there's still a very bright outlook for Tank Dell. This upcoming week, or whatever week he returns from this injury, you have to consider other options.
You are blowing my mind in bad ways. 1 out of 18 guys. Okay. And they played Denver this week, who's been good, and they've got some stud corners over there. So I'm lucky in this Vampire League. So I got to ask you this. Tank Dell this week, or, I mean, you don't know matchups as well, but Tank Dell, or I actually cannot believe I'm going to ask you this question, or Jamar Chase this week. Chase plays Jacksonville, obviously with Browning is the reason why it's actually a question. Tank Dell or Puka Nacua this week?
Oh, Puka's been struggling.
He's been below his standard, yes, in the last probably 3 or 4 weeks. And he plays Cleveland. That's a toughie.
Yeah, I think you go Puka though.
Wow, Tank Dell's been a stud for me. His numbers are insane, but that really does scare me. Okay. You got to put out an Instagram video of that one, Tom. People are going to need to hear that. And I could almost guarantee Tom's going to be right. Not that I'm rooting for that to happen, but Tom, you've been on fire with these things. So I'm not wishing the worst for Tank Dell, but I'm rooting for my boy Tom, who's killing it out here. All right.